Roguelikes are getting better. Their randomization is starting to feel less like that's the singular special feature to a game, and more like a proper underlying mechanic to something better on the surface. That's definitely the case with Hand of Fate, a fantasy deck-building role-playing game from Defiant Development, a lesser-known Kickstarter campaign child. The player is seated in front of a mysterious robed game master, surrounded by magical trinkets and macabre decorations. Players assemble equipment and encounter decks from their collection, while the game master randomizes the fortune and luck stacks. The robed GM then lays out a map of face-down encounter cards on the table. Each table of cards represents one sublevels, and there's about 3 or 4 sublevels in every level of Hand of Fate. Somewhere, hidden within every map, is either an exit or that game's final boss. Every turn, the player moves the character piece 1 space, consumes 1 food to recover 5 health, or if the player is without food, suffers a starvation penalty and loses health instead. Then the player has to handle whatever situation the encounter card has to offer on the other side. Some cards are purely beneficial, granting the player blessings, food, gold, or equipment. Others bring up fairly risky situations, like treasure chests surrounded by traps or encounters with small bands of enemies, while many, or maybe even most, are high-risk situations with potentially high payoff values, but a much greater chance of being cursed, losing valuable food, equipment, blessings, or weapons, or straight up maiming the player. It's brutal, but the brutality doesn't always feel unavoidable. Depending on how well you can keep your eye on the moving cards plays a huge role in a successful run. A really interesting part about Hand of Fate is the physical enemy encounters, and one of the mazes are played out like a third-person brawler with a combat system similar to the Arkham series, but much less refined and definitely much harder. What I love about Hand of Fate is its reliance on the player's imagination. So few games know how to properly do that anymore. Much of this game's atmosphere relies on what the card dealer says and what's written on the screen. Hand of Fate doesn't rely on cutting-edge graphics, jam-packed with scripted events and Michael Bay explosions. The minimalist soundtrack has a quality Diablo 1 Tristram feel to it, and the voice acting of the game master is really done well.
You are so close to victory, and I am so close to the final nothingness. I have fought against this day for so long.
The game has tact. Defiant Development definitely had a solid idea of what they wanted to deliver to the player, and they did it to the best of their abilities without overextending themselves. Sometimes there are some minor annoyances with the game, like when buying multiple food items. The game doesn't like to have the buy input done in rapid succession. It'll also chug a little bit when loading combat areas, but neither of those things hold back the experience at all. The game plays well on a mouse or keyboard or with a gamepad, but I prefer a gamepad because of the combat. Some games I switched back and forth because the card sections seem to feel a little better with the mouse. It has a good amount of replay value, especially with its endless mode. I'm hoping to see some booster packs in the future because that would definitely help convince me to keep this one installed. Though the game can be vicious, it's still sort of relaxing because as a card game, you don't need to have your eyes on screen all the time. The biggest thing I don't like about Hand of Fate is its price point. I feel $25 is too high. Though it's refined, it's still on the simple side. Personally, I think the $15 to $20 range would be best for this game, and that means both for the consumer and the developer. $15 would be more fair, and at the same time, it would encourage the curious who are on the fence to pick it up on a whim. And it's because of this price point alone that I'm giving this a worth try. It's a good game, it sucked me in, and I'm gonna keep playing it in my spare time because each game doesn't take very long. But at the same time, I feel it's a bit too expensive. If you have no problems with its price point, then I say go for it. Everyone else interested, I highly recommend waiting for this one to go on sale and then snatch it up the moment it's within your budget.
This video is made possible through generous fan donations on Patreon.